And we're live. Yes. Welcome to the Homelab show, episode 101, Q&A plus some miscellaneous updates. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're going to talk about, we have some feedback stuff, but we want to get to a couple news topics. And,
Yeah.
well, I don't know, our change logs news topics. I'm going to kind of go with yes.
Yeah, we could just call it the change log or something. And I don't know. We're kind of adjusting the format. We're talking about it, but I don't think we're going to change it too much, honestly. But yeah, we need to. There's some miscellany to talk about, and I think that might be a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, one of the miscellaneous things is, and people have been, and I'll be doing a review of it, of course. People have been talking about PF Sense 2.7. Will it ever get here? Isn't it dead? In every version of PF Sense CE or Community Edition is allegedly the last version, according to every YouTube comment for the last how many years I've been doing PF Sense videos. Um,
Wow.
yeah, oh, the project's dead. They're going to change it, but they haven't. And it's fun. Maybe I should go back on those videos years ago and start replying to comments of and linking to the new 2.7. But it's in beta release candidate, I should say. So it's pretty close. It's beta/release. I was actually testing it even when it was in development, and it worked pretty well. And I want to bring up something though that creates a little bit of confusion. So you have Community Edition CE and you have PF Sense Plus. Those are the two versions of PF Sense. But there's always confusion because people think PF Sense Plus costs money. And I want to get it out of the way that it's free for home use, it's free for lab use, and it's free if you have Netgate hardware. So there's three ways you can get it for free. So if you want to run the Plus version, which is going to have a little bit different of a faster release cycle, that's available. And PF Sense Plus is PF Sense CE plus other features. That is a confusion point that people seem to have. Like they think it's completely a different operating system. It's completely different, but it's actually just a few enhanced features. That's why if you do the upgrade from PF Sense CE to Plus, it actually is a really short process. It just goes, oh, cool. Let me swap these couple extra features and it reboots. And then you're on the Plus version and you can jump backwards to it. So they're not substantially different. But of course, the big deal going to 2.7 or they number it the 23 dot, they're using like the year month numbering for the PF Sense Plus versions. They're all moved to FreeBSD 14 current. Now, there seems to be people who we're thinking, well, that doesn't come out till I think it's maybe August is the official release date for FreeBSD 14. I'm trying to remember, and they're going ahead of time. But you got to remember, PF Sense, both Plus and CE, is heavily customized by the folks over at Netgate. Therefore, it is. They're not worried about other packages that may not be certified stable for the full OS release because one, they hand pick and compile the stuff themselves. They're not just grabbing out of beta repositories, but they put it all together. But it's still great to see it coming along, moving forward. And there's a blog post you can easily find. I can leave it in the show notes. You can upgrade this. It's going to be just like PF Sense Plus, PHP 8.2.6. The Open VPN is upgraded to 264. There's a bunch of other miscellaneous changes and under the hood changes, a lot of rewriting of things, including added support for the new Cha-Cha 20 Poly 1305 to IPsec and deprecating some of the older IPsec stuff, which is interesting. Because I hope no one's using those really old rusty ciphers. Please tell me you're not using them. I hate when people complain about the deprecation. I'm like, don't complain about it. Like you should be on a path where that's like, oh, glad that doesn't affect me. I'm not using that really insecure protocol. Because the only reason you use it is not because you're trying to get a PF Sense talking to a PF Sense. It's because you're talking to something that probably shouldn't be on the internet anymore. It's probably past its end of life.
You have a point there. And your description of PF Sense Plus kind of makes me think of it like DLC for PF Sense.
Yeah, it's a couple of enhancements, and those enhancements are not part of the public code repository. But if you were to log into your PF Sense Plus and poke around, because you can still SSH into it, they're not block boxing it where you can't look at anything. You'll actually go, hey, look, all the packages and open source stuff that I'm familiar with that it's built on top of. The only part that's technically not part of that, but you can still see all it's written in PHP, by the way, so you can still look at the logic and poke at it, is the what is it, the boot enhancements and things like that. So I'm a big fan of the PF Sense Plus, even for home users, even if you're not using a Netgate device because it's free. I don't see any reason not to use it, but hey, they still are updating a Community Edition. And I'll kind of comment on this. I want to throw this out there as a topic that me and Jay will want some feedback on. Feedback at the homelab.show, because we're going to be reading feedback. But open source isn't free in the way
Yep.
people think it's free. It takes time for someone to write good code to put things together. And I kind of want to tackle it as a topic. I actually, unrelated to PFSense, and obviously PFSense is funded by the people at Netgate. Most all the people that develop PFSense happen to be on Netgate's payroll. But also pivoting over to things like XCPNG, I seen someone was upset in the forums. They had an kind of an esoteric problem and they suggested they buy support, and a person did not like that answer. You should be able to support me in this forum. I'm not getting the support I expect. And you're like, we have support contracts that we sell. And by the way, you're trying to do something weird with the layered VPNs in a virtualization system. Like you're doing something that's kind of like not like a product broken. Like you want support getting the product to do something there. But it's one of those things where you have this weird challenge, and the team over at Bates has talked about this, where if you make a product so incredibly good it doesn't need support, you're going to sell less support contracts, which kind of create a problem of how do you fund that model of building good software and giving it away for free. Now they plan to keep giving it away for free, but it's always trying to figure out how you can have some business model. That's why I say open source isn't free. Someone has to pay people to write code. Now, whether that's them doing it as a hobby or them doing it in the case of, like, let's use Bitwarden for an example, the way they fund it through things like service delivery, like, hey, all the code's free, but if you would like, updated package management and maintenance, we can offer hosting or offer service delivery through that. And it makes enough money to keep paying the developers. And, Bitwarden I like as an example, because one of the things not all open source projects go through, but Bitwarden goes through on a regular basis, is code review. Code review is $100,000 or more to hire third-party companies to audit your open source project. OpenVPN actually did this, and it was donated from PIA, the privacy internet. They had actually been the ones who funded it because OpenVPN needed a code audit and didn't have enough money for it at the time. So a third party, and it's back to some of these challenges. I want people to think about that a little bit and give some opinions on it. Hit us up at feedback at the Homelab show. Maybe it's a topic me and Jay dive into, just probably as a video together, but
I think we should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, the summarized opinion on my end is that if there's no statement of work, there's no SLA, then nobody owes anyone anything, period. That's just the bottom line. Doesn't mean that no one will give you something and nobody will put it out there or cater to a feature. I've seen many times, in open source where someone says, wouldn't it be awesome if this feature existed? They put in a wish or a feature request and it happens. We have that ability. So we have all these benefits from open source, but nobody's owed anything. I mean, sometimes the person responding in a support forum for an open source project could be someone that just volunteers 1 hour a week and never makes money from it. They just love doing it. And then you have companies, like you said, supporting it. So I think it would be good to adjust the expectations here, because I feel like with some mindsets, you give someone something for free, and then they just want to take an inch and go a mile with it. And we got to really just think about this in a human level. I mean, you were saying that there's $100,000 in a code audit. I think about 25,000 of that is the amount of coffee you have to purchase to get through millions of lines of code without falling asleep. It is not easy and is often not something that people want to do unless you're a computer science major. That seems like an anxiety inducing like mountain of work to go through. And I tell people as well, just because the code is open and can be audited doesn't mean it was. It means that someone can do it, doesn't mean
Right.
they did. So we
And
could talk more about that in a future episode, especially if enough people tell us that they want us to do it, then we might
and I'll
be convinced to do it.
And I want to bring up a comment. I see someone said, sounds like you're advocating that having a free broken product is good because it lets you sell support. These are the exact answers people give. And I'm like, no, by no measure at all am I saying they should sandbag or leave broken or leave something out that forces you to buy it. I'm talking about people need to consider the business model, how
Right.
these things are supported. I'm not saying it's an easy answer, by the way. That's why it's a discussion. I didn't give you the definitive guide to how to fund open source because that doesn't exist. There's a lot of different opinions of it. And there's just some challenges that companies have run into where they and like I said, I believe Vates has a whole blog post where they just talk about it, and they are absolutely completely committed to keeping the whole CPG platform 100% free. That is a top to bottom, promise they have. And there's other companies that make similar promises, like our friends over at CrowdSec. Now, CrowdSec has a different way of monetizing it, but it might be, like I said, a fun discussion on there of all the different ways you can monetize it, because there's more than one way to do it. And there's just some of the challenges. And I like when companies or groups and individuals that run open source projects have things like just donation options. Is that enough to do it? I've actually heard people say the problem they've run into with donations is so inconsistent, and people seem to want to have a regular salary to do their work. And they said the donation stuff is so hit and miss. Like, great, we got a donation. We've got 3 more months of runway to pay employees. If we don't get our donation or a donation, enough donations, what do? Stop the project? Everyone has to go get a job somewhere. There's some real challenges from a business management stuff. That's why I think it's a fun discussion.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds a little off topic for the Home Lab, but we also are pretty heavy Linux in the Home Lab. And I think this is
Yeah.
I think it's in the wheelhouse of something that's interested to a lot of our audience. So hit us up,
Yeah.
feedback at the homelab.show. Me and Jay love hearing from you.
I would also say that it might be more on topic than you think because, there's all kinds of home lab people, some people that are beginners, right? They don't know as much and they're learning. Then you have the expert level people that are able to submit a bug request or a bug report or something like that to an open source project that and let's be honest, we scrutinize our home lab more than enterprises scrutinize their entire data center. And I'm not even kidding. Like the average home labber, I would bet anything has built a better set of infrastructure than some data center people because they're all spread different directions, but we use it and we'll be more likely to find a problem in the code. So if anything, I would say it might be more on topic. But in on point about your mention about that I think that was more like a snarky comment that person made about it, where, "What do you do? Just put flaws in there?"
Yeah.
That's more of just a dry joke, in my opinion. Nobody is gonna do that. I mean, think of it this way, if a company did do that, I can promise you they will make the facepalm section of the, network, podcast that I do, the Enterprise Network Security or Enterprise Linux Security podcast that I do. I can't talk today. But it would make the facepalm section of that podcast if that ever happened, and that is just yeah, no. I totally understood what you meant. Let's
Yeah.
not take that person's comment too seriously. They're just being, hypothetical about that. But
Yeah.
the thing is, it's difficult to build a support model around something that's free. And you and I do that more. We have to realize we already do that. We put YouTube videos out there, and yeah, we might have courses one day, but we'll always have free videos out there in just the same frequency we have now and we give that away for free and we're building a way to pay the bills by
Yeah.
giving out information. So it's not all that different for us as it is for them.
No, it's definitely related to that. So
Yep.
Um, on to another update. I did a video on it, so that'll be where the more in-depth version is. But yes, TrueNAS Scale is moving right along. They've got some new features, new updates. Well, and new deprecations. They actually titled it "New Things Deprecated." I thought that was interesting, and I knew it would cause a little bit of confusion, so I tried to be as articulate as I could on the video I did on there. But essentially, they're getting rid of rsync modules running as a service in the UI. You can still, at first, I thought they were getting rid of rsync, which was concerning, but it's actually just the modules. I guess the modules natively, because they just listen on a port. I think it's 897. Nonetheless, they just listen, and there's not really much security on that. I don't know if you've ever used rsync as a module. You probably use
I
rsync over
mean,
at
like as a system service or a daemon, yeah, I have. I personally haven't run into a use case for it that can't easily be, done a different way. Like I've never as long as I've been using rsync and I use it a lot. Oh, I mean, like I can't even tell you how many hours of rsync transfers have happened over my career. And not one time have I found anything personally that would need the daemon
the
or service to be running it. And I'm not saying there's no use case for it. I'm sure there is.
yeah.
No one's going to develop it because they, have nothing better to do and it serves no purpose. I get it. It probably does. But I don't know if that has anything to do with it. If other people agree with me on this, is it the case that the use case is going away for that in particular without taking away from rsync. I mean, I've never been handicapped with rsync by not having that feature, so that's just me anyway.
Yeah, the I'm assuming most time you're doing it over SSH, and they're still leaving the
Yeah,
rsync on within the build because back to our hey, check out our show on appliance versus build, but the appliance means they're going to limit what you may or may not have, but they're not removing it from TrueNAS. They're just decided it's not going to be a module with a menu anymore. They also took out, but well, removed where it is. Took out would probably be the wrong way to word it. MinIO, which is a really cool project you should check out independently. But MinIO also is built into TrueNAS. The problem is MinIO has actually got a pretty rapid release cycle. They're always adding new cool features, but the appliance problem is it doesn't update individual things. It updates the whole operating system at once, each update. So they are deprecating it being built into TrueNAS and moved it to being an app option. So you can install it as an application, which applications then can get updates on whatever release cycle they want. So there's a new version. Cool. Here's a new version of it. I haven't really tested setting it up that way, but because it's officially supported from the people over at TrueNAS, hey, I think that's going to be a better way to do it because you're going to get a newer version. I imagine this just makes sense. If you're building an appliance, how much can I remove from the core of the appliance and put in as an application to get updated on a more regular basis? Because, oh, there's a new version of MinIO, or what if there's a security vulnerability in MinIO? We want to get that updated. We got to respin the whole OS. Oh, that doesn't sound like the way we want to manage that.
right.
Um, so there can't. I imagine we're going to see. Well, they have a list of all the things they're removing as that, but most of these things that are removed, with the exception of the rsync modules, are going to. They have another way of doing it through the apps. So, but check it out, the new version of TrueNAS Scale. I'm pretty happy with it overall. I updated on June 13th, and today is June 21st, and all my updates went smooth and things went well. I want to just so it doesn't get lost because someone asked the question. They said they have a Netgate 3100 and want to know if they should update it to the 23 release. I think it's going to be 2305 of pfSense Plus. The answer is yes. All of our clients that have 3100 still in service, we've updated them to the latest version. So I don't think there's any reason for a Netgate 3100 not to be on the latest version, but back up before you do it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to address, or at least acknowledge, the news from Red Hat today. That you asked me this morning what my thoughts were on it. And I'm like, well, I don't have any thoughts. I just found out about it from you. Because honestly, I overslept this morning, and as you texted me about this, I'm just getting the haze from my eyes and whatnot, and I had a chance to read it. So I do want to put out some initial reactions. I don't want to call these thoughts because I feel like that means that I thought more about it, but I'm going to be thinking a lot about this. So what I'm talking about is the news that the source code repositories for Red Hat are going to be CentOS Stream. Okay. Now, at first, you might think, well, what's the big deal? CentOS Stream, they've been positioning that as upstream kind of thing. But let's peel that back a layer and just think about the distributions that are based on Red Hat. You have Alma Linux, you have Rocky Linux. There's a number of these, and they basically do what CentOS used to do. They repackage the source code and give it to you without the branding. They're able to do that because the Red Hat branding isn't there. They have their own branding. That's why it's Alma Linux OS and not, Red Hat, or a play on the name, or Rocky for that matter. Now, according to Phoronix, which is the link that you gave me, it does kind of seem like this is something that's going to make it more challenging for these distributions to exist. And this is really concerning to me. It's like I look at their blog on the Red Hat site where they made this announcement, and there's a section at the end that says, why make this change? And it's just like they may as well have not even included that section, in my opinion, because it says nothing, like literally nothing. It's like in the open source community, we're really good at making software. We're not as good about communicating changes as we would like to be. That's why I feel sometimes people get concerned and upset because they think something's happening and they don't know because of the communication. But the communication this time doesn't even recognize the rebranded enterprise Linux distributions at all. And the reason they give in summary is, there's lots of engagement and excitement about CentOS Stream. And at first that's a warning sign to me because I'm like, is there? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people like it. I'm not going to say that no one likes CentOS Stream, but I talk to a lot of Linux people on a regular basis, countless people. Not one person has brought up CentOS Stream in conversation other than to, express frustration over the new normal. Now, again, I think CentOS Stream probably is a good product, and when I look at it, it doesn't seem flawed or anything. I don't really have anything against it from a technical level, but it just kinda seems like I just want some numbers. Like, if they're saying there's lots of excitement and engagement over CentOS Stream, and that's why they're doing that, that's fine. I just wanna see numbers. I wanna see adoption numbers, and maybe I'll look it up after this podcast is over, but, that's a little red flag to me. But that aside, I'm gonna be talking to some individuals that are, behind these distributions like Rocky Linux and Alma Linux OS, and off camera, get their reactions because I feel like they're going to be able to give me a very well researched opinion because this affects them. And either this is not going to affect them and they didn't communicate it right and there's still going to be an avenue for them to exist, or I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But I wanted to just put that out there that literally today, I guess this is as close to breaking news as we've ever had.
Yeah.
Red Hat is changing the game again. And this is why, if anyone wants to know why I don't cover Red Hat on the channel, it's not because, well, you laugh, but it's not because of any disdain. Because regardless of how I feel about it, if people want to learn it, they want to learn it. They don't care if Jay loves it, but if Jay can teach it, then Jay will. But the situation is, imagine if I just recorded a tutorial series on Red Hat just to wake up to this news, and I have to re-record a number of sections. And Red Hat has been changing things so often that it's hard for me to do a tutorial series on it because for all I know, in a month from now, it could change again and invalidate the series. It already invalidated the CentOS tutorial series as soon as they made that change. So if anyone out there is waiting for Red Hat, coverage, you'll get it. I just can't tell you when. It might be a month, a year, a couple of years, just whenever they decide to settle down with all these changes. But I just wanted to mention that too.
Yeah. So it's definitely it's interesting, and it kind of relates back to some of our open source stuff. Obviously, IBM bought Red Hat. Things
Yep.
seemed calm for a while, but they are clearly not calm now.
Well, I could, if everything is as they say it is, then I feel like what this might cause is people to double down on not using Red Hat. Like they might, I'm not saying that this is to kill the rebranded distributions because that, I mean, we don't know. It might very well might be that might be the reason why they're doing this. Or that might just
Yeah.
be a coincidence. We don't really know.
Hard to
But
say.
it does affect everyone. And I feel like this is going to push these enterprise Linux rebrands to become their own thing separately, their own thing away from Red Hat. And then Red Hat will lose, another wing of its adoption, which they really can't, with the layoffs, they can't afford to lose that right now. This is not a smart decision so far. Just
Right.
going to say.
And,
Anyway,
and if you're going, if not Red Hat, then what? Well, go to the Homelab show, episode 100,
yep.
where we go on about DBN 12, and we really like it. So they're definitely, if you're just going, what instead? Because I don't like to complain about something. You never talk about the problem unless you have a solution or are working towards it or asking for the community effort towards it. But there is a solution. It's called Debian 12. So,
And I wanna just, you mentioned that, so I wanna know, and maybe there's a way to do this. It'd be kind of fun just to look at, like, if there's a way to see installation numbers for Debian in a reasonable amount of time. I know that it's hard because we could have a flash drive with our distro on there and not report to anyone that we installed it. We could even have a machine that's running an emulation computer in our closet that, maybe is connected to a TV or something and not the internet. We really don't know. But if we could know, it'd be interesting to see as drama starts with the, corporations and the
yeah,
companies,
to watch
if
the
if
rise
you
of
watch the
Debian 12.
Debian numbers go up. So as this news is breaking about, Red Hat, is Debian server seeing more downloads? I would have to say probably because a distribution that doesn't change much is going to look very, very, very appealing right now.
Yep. So that's
And
definitely interesting. I'll answer just a couple questions that popped in
mhm,
there. I'll actually pose this question to Jay blindly. If a project updates more frequently, does that automatically mean it's more secure? Because this is an argument people make all the time. So,
no.
Okay. Um, yes, there is a slower release cycle for the pfSense CE, and some people like OpenSense. I don't have any problems with OpenSense, but it does update more frequently. Maybe that's something you want as a home lab. You and I want the latest, greatest updates, and I love that they have tons of package updates, and I don't mind doing them. That's fine. That is your choice. If someone who manages businesses with many of them, I kind of like the fact that there's not a ton of updates. Now, you can say that Fortinet has many more updates, substantially more updates than other products. But I also did a video on Fortinet and just how many CVEs that were above 9 that they had because they keep forgetting and putting a password inside their own VPNs, in a whole series of problems. They have a history of it. So once again, update frequency is not an indicator of whether or not something is secure. It comes
Right.
down to how well the code is written. And even though pfSense CE is based on 2.6, the current release, there's not any known vulnerabilities in
Right.
pfSense. So just because it's old doesn't mean it is. They have been good in the past, as Netgate has, when there's been a problem. For example, there was an Nginx problem a number of years ago, and they used Nginx in the back end. So they had a point release to fix that Nginx problem. This is like 4 or 5 years ago. So they do stay on top of if one of the things that they have has a flaw, they will send out a patch. But if it's not flawed, it doesn't need a patch. So it doesn't need an
Yep.
update.
And I'm going to elaborate even more on that. So let's just think about this in terms of I'll call it scope, the update scope or whatever clever term we want to put on this. If we look at Debian, since we were just talking about that, last time I looked, and I'm going to warn you, this number is inaccurate. It's just the last time I looked, it was like there's like 65,000 packages in their repositories. Okay, so when you look at Debian or any other distribution, I mean, Debian's getting security updates all the time. Why? Well, the scope is much larger. They don't know what you have installed. You might have installed PHP, you might have installed Nginx, or maybe you've installed neither of those and you installed something else. They're the general purpose operating system. And other distributions are the same. They have to keep updating everything because there's more to update. Now, when you have OpenSense, I can understand the excitement around updates because and here's the difference between Linux people and Windows people, okay? If you're a Windows person and you get that notification that there's an update, you're like, "Oh, again? Really? I just did this." Now a Linux person gets an update, like, "Ooh, new features." It's like getting presents under the Christmas tree constantly, and this is one of the reasons why Arch is so popular because there's always new features and things. So, if these updates give people new features in OpenSense, I'd say, yeah, no wonder they're all about it because they really love that, and I love that. But like to your point, when we get down to security updates, OpenSense isn't going to have 60,000 packages. The scope is much smaller. They're going to cherry pick the kernel. They're going to cherry pick this, whatever they need, is what they're going to include because the threat surface is larger when you have more packages. So
Yeah.
there's interest in keeping it slim. But as you slim it down, the number of things that can be updated diminishes, and you're going to get into a situation where yeah, they didn't patch this vulnerability. Well, it didn't apply to their users because they don't even include the thing in the first place. So why would they need to patch anything? The best way to think about it from a security standpoint, in my mind, is match the CVE. If there's a CVE in the news and it affects routers, how fast did they patch it? That's all that matters. Nothing else matters but that alone when it comes to security. If it takes them 3 months to update a security vulnerability that's
That's not
critical,
good.
that's not good. But if there's never any update for like months, and then there is because a CVE was announced and they patched it immediately, that's what builds confidence. It's not the
Yeah.
number. It's like
It's the response to the
it's
problem.
quality over quantity and
Yeah.
time to response. That's what matters. But with home labbers, it's strange because it's not just about security. It's like, ooh, WireGuard, ooh, this, I want this, I want this, because we get those things and we're excited about those things. And I will admit, when you have something like PFSense that changes less often, it's not as exciting. In home lab, people, a lot of us, some of us don't like exciting, but some of us really do. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to and why that mindset exists. We just have to think of it in scope of new feature or security patch. Lack of security patch, is there an actual issue or is it just not something that applies to the distribution? So I
Yep.
think that's all that matters.
And we've seen this both in the feedback that was messaged to us, like just people asking to do a Home Lab episode on Raid. Neither me nor Jay use Unraid. I don't have anything against it. I just don't use it. I know it's not as performance oriented as TrueNAS, and it doesn't use ZFS, being that I'm a big ZFS fan, and so is Jay, due to the integrity and all the wonderful features of the ZFS file system. That's one of the reasons I don't really use it. Now, Unraid is getting ZFS. I know they're working on an integration port, but two problems. I don't know very well how they're going to be implementing it. Two, it will eliminate the number one reason people want us to do an Unraid video. The reason they want us to do is because Unraid offers this flexibility of just adding drives and expanding the RAID kind of on the fly. The problem is with the way ZFS works, you can't do that. So if Unraid uses ZFS, they don't magically solve that other problem at all. They actually now create the reason that you thought you wanted to use Unraid. So I don't know that it's really going to push me towards it unless there's some killer feature that they have, some enhancement that would be better than TrueNAS. Then I'm like, cool. But for now, TrueNAS, and I've also talked about, and me and Jay were actually on this topic last night, 45 drives with their just running Linux, and then you throw Houston OS on there to manage ZFS. That's a great solution. I have that running in production with clients. It's a great system. So there's other ways to do it. And Unraid doesn't, I don't know where Unraid fits in that. Like, what is the reason Tom would use Unraid over the alternatives I'm familiar with? I like learning new things when that new thing comes with, hey, you're going to spend some time learning that new thing, but you get with it this incredible feature or performance enhancement. So it's nothing against Unraid. I just don't know what it holds over the other systems that I currently use that would make me want to go over to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's that for me too. It's also time, because some of the
Oh
things
yeah.
I've covered lately have, especially, oh, by the way, the System D video is out today. I totally meant to bring that up at the beginning of the video. But that took a bit. And it's just, and I realized even in that video, there's more to do, but there's just a lot to cover. And sometimes it's just down to time.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah, that is always what it comes down to. Is much as we like to bring you the latest and greatest and the cool things you can run in your home lab, that often the NAS is kind of like just a stable base that we build things on, because we have to keep our videos recording and have to keep all of our data somewhere. We want to talk to you about new features in Nextcloud or something like that, because that's, Jay's got some great tutorials on Nextcloud. That's something where people, there's a lot of questions around it. I think it's a great system. If you are privacy oriented, you are going, maybe I don't want to stick all my stuff in one of these large cloud providers. Nextcloud's a pretty good alternative and definitely popular in the home lab world for people
yeah.
looking for that. So, Jay's got a whole tutorial about getting started with it. And I think it's a great platform.
Yeah, I think another thing for me is hardware because I use my hardware. Like I always tell people, look in your closet and repurpose something that you're not using. That's what we home lab people do. We do that
Yeah.
all the time. But I don't have. I mean, I literally take my own advice. I have nothing other than maybe a couple of hard drives, nothing consequential that is not being unused. I'm using my stuff, so maybe one day I'll just set up a program or someone can just let me borrow a server and I'll just use it as the basis for a tutorial to teach people something. Because I feel like, it's probably getting to that point now because if someone donates a server, it's going to enter into production and then it won't be a test server. So if I have to send it back to someone, that'll probably keep me honest. So I guess
Yeah.
there's a hardware issue as well, but we try. There's only a million things to cover, but we'll cover them eventually.
Yep. Um, and as I just want to remind, we're saying a couple more times because we think one of our format changes is making sure people know feedback at the homelab.show. That's an email address. That's what the @
Yep.
symbol is. We actually don't mind. We actually get less email. We were really hesitant to use emails. We thought we'd get overwhelmed with it. We're underwhelmed at the moment. Not that we want spam or anything, but we're just saying, hey, if you want to reach out to us, we haven't taken the time to engage with people. We like engaging with people that join the live stream here as well. So this is
Yep.
we do want to make sure we are is interactive with the audience to make sure we're fulfilling any of the requests you have. And hey, reach out. That's something we really do want to very directly engage with the community.
Exactly. And another feedback item, I actually lost the comment because it's in one of the YouTube videos. I think it was in
Oh
our Debian one. Is because I feel like we answer comments in YouTube videos, but sometimes we might want to bring them up.
yeah.
But this was in regards to actually my Debian review, but it was is mentioned on our episode 100 because we were talking about Debian and bringing up the fact that Debian, works well on old hardware and has a great community. And all of that's true. I mean, that's absolutely true. It was about a comment I made in the video about Linux isn't just for servers. I was just talking about the mentality other people have. However true or false that might be, that's what people will say, and sometimes it's just me reporting on the general mentality of things. But it absolutely is true that Debian has an amazing community, and it's not just like this version is the only good one. I mean, it's always been good. It's just that I've had issue with the fact that they don't cater enough to people that aren't fortunate enough to have open hardware. Maybe whatever computer they can afford, the only thing they have has an NVIDIA GPU or has a Wi-Fi card or something. And I think that's important. And in the comment, it basically looked down on Debian for adopting this change to, and the comment said something about whiny users, but that's not what it is at all, and the person called it bloat, and it's not. Let me get rid of the bloat thing right now. I'm looking on Amazon, and for $21, I could buy a 512 gigabyte SSD. Drivers are megabytes. It's not bloat. I don't care. It's just not bloat. If it gets somebody's hardware working, it's necessary. But not only that, it's not going to be installed or even in use if there's no hardware that needs that driver. So it pretty much um, the definition of bloat just doesn't fit here. This is a necessity because we've been trying in the Linux community for decades, banging the drum, letting proprietary hardware companies know that, they're doing a disservice to us by not giving us the source code because we, are running into bugs, security issues, and some serious problems because of these drivers. And we're asking to fix them. We want to make this stuff work for the users, and Debian wants to make their distribution work for their users. But the reality is these companies aren't listening, and we have to let people make full use of their hardware while we're trying to figure this out. I would hope there's a solution that requires no proprietary drivers, but Debian made the right choice. And I
Yeah.
think every distribution absolutely must facilitate hardware because even though the criticisms against it are all true, and I agree with all of them, the reality is if you talk about Linux to your friend for years and then one day they're like, "Fine, I'll try the Linux thing." And they do, and their Wi-Fi card doesn't work, their NVIDIA card doesn't work. Guess what? You lost that person forever. They will never try Linux again ever. Okay? I want to be double down on that. They will never try it again. It's not, and these people, unlike us, they don't care about the politics. They just want their computer to work.
They just want to use the
Right.
system. They don't want to
And
know
that's
what
what we're up against.
legal
That's what we're
arguments led
Yep.
to it.
Exactly. That's what we are up against. It's either we get that user or we don't. It's that's just that simple. And no amount of telling them how evil proprietary hardware is going to make them feel like they're going to be okay with not making full use of the hardware they bought. So I mean, yeah, it's true that Debian is a great distribution for older hardware. Absolutely. Their community is amazing. And by no means am I criticizing Debian here or trying to because they're the subject now, but I mean, other distributions have the same mindset. They're not unique when it comes to this. So I'm only pointing the finger at them because they're the current topic. But the reality is, Debian has a very hard situation. It's like, do we cave to what we believe in to give users a good experience, or do we double down on that and try to educate users? But the education thing isn't working because the only people that could really make people hate NVIDIA is NVIDIA themselves. NVIDIA is the only company that can make users hate NVIDIA. Okay, we Linux users cannot push people to hate NVIDIA. Only NVIDIA can ruin themselves. Okay, they're the only ones
Yes.
capable of this. So in the meantime, we just got to get everything working while we, figure out how to make hardware drivers suck less.
Yeah, it's an ongoing challenge getting them on there, and I'm excited to see even to the hardware manufacturers, it's getting more accessible for people in the home lab to be able to get these. I know maybe one day I'll review and buy one when I need another upgrade, the framework laptop, because I think that's one of the cool things out there. Because we just had this discussion at work where you had to buy some new laptops for employees, and we were talking about Lenovo has, I think it's a firmware blob, and they won't let you change the Wi-Fi card because it expects that Wi-Fi card to be in there.
That's still the thing now, 'cause I ran into that, like,
Yeah.
5 or 6 years ago or something.
Yeah, and it's still a thing that some of these companies are still doing, with different locks that you can't swap the Wi-Fi cards in them, and it's like they're not favorable to the, community.
I could tell you why that is.
Oh, yeah.
The actual reason why they do that. And this is, something that a lot that, is a little bit of trivia, Windows trivia, surprisingly, coming from the Linux guy. There's a I forgot how many points it is on the scale, but basically, I'm sure you remember how, if you had like Windows XP, Vista, whatever, you change the hardware and you got to reactivate it. So what ends up happening is, if I remember correctly, the network card is worth 3 points, and I think it's up to 10 points. There's a different point value for every hardware that's
Oh,
changed.
yeah,
I think
for the changes. This
right.
is a
So a
BIOS
network
drop.
card is like, I think everything is 1 point. The network card is 3. So that's gonna be the most likely thing to trip the activation, and, they're selling OEM licenses and everything. So technically, the installation image is going to be fixed to make this very unlikely to happen, but the situation is licensing, and it's matched to the hardware such that the network card is that important, and they'll get more support calls if they let people do it. It's not just my network card I just installed doesn't work. It's my computer unactivated, which is a completely different support call. But the thing is, I'm not advocating for what they're doing. By no means am I saying they should be putting that restriction, because my mentality is, if the user decided to make a change, they decided to take responsibility for that change when they call support. It's not their job to enforce it. It's what the user is going to do what the user can do. They can and people I've seen ThinkPad people change the screens just because they want a better refresh rate. I mean, when we have people with a ThinkPad, they go to extremes here, okay? But there's still no excuse, and I wish they would stop doing that. I really do.
Yeah, it's just a lot of tediousness on there. And,
Yeah.
we're always advocating, and back to the Homelab people, like, you want to be able to tinker with the hardware. That's part of the joy of doing this, is being able to tinker with everything. So I'm
Yep.
always trying to avoid companies that lock you in and don't let you tinker, because you should be able, one, be sovereign over your data. Two, you should be able to tinker with the hardware you have to customize it to your needs and how your use cases fit. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of any of these companies that make that harder for you to do.
I think the best way to think about it in my mind is that the company's involvement between, in between you and the product should stop at the cash register. You
Yeah,
buy it, you own it, they're out of the picture. And
I still have.
unless you have a warranty claim that you could have the vendor back into the picture, but that whole involvement should end at the cash register when you pay for the product. And then if you need to warranty it, RMA it, whatever their policy is, that's fine. But it's like they want to keep having their hand in the relationship after the cash register. Imagine, buying a movie and then having a company contact you for a review constantly. I mean, we might end up there someday, but usually it's generally agreed upon. You buy a retail product and it's yours, but they would have you believe otherwise. It's just a weird mentality if you think about it.
It is.
Yeah.
But nonetheless,
Anyway.
is that all we have? Are we at the end of the list, Jay?
Oh gosh, we have like so many more things. I think we'll need to do another QA, and I probably hogged way
Okay.
too much conversation this time. So, but you know what? Just give us some feedback, and hopefully my
Yeah.
long-winded responses will generate some feedback from the community, because we would love to hear from you guys. Where are you guys? Come on.
Yeah. And we also, one of the things I'm looking at is possibly there's a tool, and I'm gonna see how it works, that allows you to record and embed a voice call. So we can actually play your voice if you want to. We're still gonna keep feedback at the Home Lab show, but for people who go, I don't feel like typing all those words. I just want to press record and send these fellas a message that they'll play on the show and answer the questions. We like
Yeah.
doing a lot of this. Like I said, we want to make sure we're really focusing on a lot of this community engagement, because we do care about the communities we're in. We care about supporting, and we care about bringing more people into the Home Lab, and
Yeah.
it's been fun. We've got to me and Jay over our career have got to engage with people a lot. We were talking about missing the old distro parties that happened, or the Actually, I think it was even before Jay's time. I think it was in the early 2000s when we used to have Linux installed.
Release parties. Yeah, yeah.
We had
We
release
should
parties, but
we
we did
should
have
get that
install
going.
fests at the Linux user group meetups and things like that. It's harder to do that with a global audience, but hey, if we can at least have some feedback and engagement with people, just we want to make sure we're helping everybody out and getting people started on this, because this has never
Yep.
been a better time to be a home lab.
We did an install fest at PenguinCon. Remember that? We had a
Oh
flat
yeah, we
that
did.
was when you, introduced me to, gosh, it's right on the tip of my tongue, that US I did a video on it, I can't remember the name of it, the, Ventoy. That's when I saw Ventoy for the first time, was at PenguinCon, and we did that install fest. So, yeah, they're a lot of fun. We should do that again sometime, somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, the arranging install fest for an international audience is a little bit more challenging, but it can be
Yeah.
done somehow. We'll figure it out. Download this link. Let's do a big, I don't know, group party and get everyone installing Linux.
I think we can make something happen.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next episode.
See you around.